Most people spend their lives chasing desire, never realizing that the very energy they give away so easily could be the key to their deepest transformation. In a culture obsessed with instant pleasure and endless stimulation, the idea of sexual abstinence sounds like denial. But what if it's the exact opposite? What if it's a kind of ignition, a way to awaken something powerful that's been buried beneath comfort and noise? Carl Jung didn't view sexual energy as something to be suppressed. He saw it as libido, a raw, psychic force that fuels every part of the human experience. It's not just about lust, it's about life force, creativity, drive, spiritual depth. And when that energy isn't discharged outwardly, it begins to build and change form. Abstinence, in this light, becomes more than just a personal choice. It becomes a path, a confrontation with the self, because the longer you resist the urge to escape through release, the louder your inner world becomes. Thoughts sharpen, dreams intensify, you begin to feel things more deeply, not less. It's uncomfortable, but it's real. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what makes abstinence so powerful. It brings the unconscious to the surface. It reveals what's been hiding beneath your compulsions. It forces you to stop numbing yourself and start facing yourself. And maybe that's why most people avoid it. Because real power doesn't come from acting on every impulse. It comes from holding it, refining it, and learning to direct it with purpose. In this sense, sexual abstinence becomes less about what you're denying and more about what you're building. A clearer mind, a sharper will, a deeper sense of who you really are once all the noise fades. What we're exploring here isn't a moral code, it's a psychological awakening. A deeper look at how restraint, when understood through Jung's lens, can become a tool for reclaiming energy, activating vision, and stepping into the life you were meant to create. When you stop giving away your energy so freely, you start to feel just how much of it you actually have. That's where Carl Jung's concept of libido becomes essential. Not libido as we commonly know it today, just sexual appetite, but as a vital life force, a kind of inner fuel that powers everything you do. To Jung, libido wasn't limited to the bedroom. It was your drive to create, to think, to grow, to love, to transcend. It was the force behind your ambitions, your imagination, even your spiritual awakening. And when this energy is constantly discharged through casual pleasure, it doesn't disappear. It simply loses direction. It gets scattered. It stops building toward anything. Think about it. How often do we reach for quick satisfaction when we're anxious or bored? A scroll through social media, a late-night hookup, a stream of pornography, another dopamine hit to keep us from feeling what's really there. We call it freedom, but is it? Is it really freedom when your energy is being pulled in 100 directions and none of them are leading you home? When you choose abstinence, even temporarily, you begin to see how much of your drive has been wasted on short-term rewards. You feel the restlessness, the frustration, but beneath all that, there's clarity, there's potential. Because now you're holding on to the very energy that could launch a business, write a book, build a new version of yourself. And that shift doesn't happen in theory, it happens in real life. Why do you think so many people report increased focus, creativity, and confidence after periods of abstinence? It's not magic. It's just redirected energy. Instead of being drained outward, it gets channeled inward and then upward. You don't have to be a monk in a cave to understand this. Even in the chaos of modern life, the principle holds. What you hold on to, you gain power over. What you constantly give away controls you. So the question becomes, are you using your energy to escape your life or to build it? That's what Jung invites us to consider, not just how we feel in moments of pleasure, but what kind of person we become because of them, and more importantly, what kind of person we could become if we chose something different. So, what kind of person could you become if you chose to hold your energy rather than leak it? Carl Jung believed in something ancient yet often forgotten in today's world: sublimation. The idea that instinctual drives, especially sexual energy, can be transformed into higher expressions, into creativity, discipline, spiritual awakening, and personal power. This isn't suppression, it's alchemy, turning base instincts into gold, not literally, but psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually. Let's be honest, anyone can give in to their urges. That's easy. What's rare is the person who can feel that craving rising like a storm and still choose to direct it, to transmute it. That kind of inner mastery is powerful, and it shows up in real life. Look at someone who's been through a major breakup, but chooses not to run into the arms of the next available person just to fill the void. Instead, they throw themselves into learning, creating, building. Maybe they start working out, launch a side business, reconnect with their purpose. That's not repression, that's redirection. Or take the person who's used to numbing with online stimulation but cuts it off completely. The first few days are torture, restlessness, agitation, but then something shifts. They're more alert. Their sleep improves. They notice things. Their mind sharpens. That's sublimation at work. It's not that the energy disappears, it mutates, it climbs the ladder, it becomes willpower, focus, vision. But let me ask you something most people never consider. How many dreams died because someone couldn't control a moment of desire? How many people never wrote the book, never finished the degree, never built the life they wanted, not because they weren't smart or talented, but because they were leaking energy through habits they never questioned? The discipline of abstinence becomes a kind of fire, and fire, when uncontrolled, burns everything. But when focused, it forges you. Jung understood that the battle was never just against the outside world. The real war is internal, and abstinence becomes your battleground. Not to punish yourself, but to reshape yourself. You stop asking, what am I missing out on? And start asking, what am I making room for? Because here's the truth. Some parts of you only wake up in the absence of indulgence. And once they do, you're no longer the same. But once you stop feeding the urge, once you stop running from discomfort, something begins to rise. Not just clarity, not just creativity, something older, something deeper. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of you you've rejected, buried, or denied. This is where abstinence gets real. Because when the distractions fall away, you're no longer protected from your own mind. The silence gets louder. The emotions get sharper. You might feel anger, sadness, loneliness, even shame, not because you're failing, but because you're finally facing what's always been there. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Abstinence, in this sense, is not just about reclaiming energy. It's about meeting your shadow, and for many, that's where the discomfort really begins. Think about it. How many people use sex or porn or constant messaging, not for connection, but for avoidance, to drown out feelings they're too afraid to name? When those outlets disappear, the emotions surface, and it's not always pretty. A man might discover that his constant sexual urge isn't just lust, it's a mask for insecurity, a need to be validated, to feel wanted. A woman might realize that what she thought was empowerment through attention was actually a shield against loneliness. These aren't easy truths, but they're necessary ones. Because the shadow isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Jung believed that when you integrate the shadow, when you acknowledge the dark instead of denying it, you unlock real power. The kind that doesn't need performance, doesn't beg for validation, doesn't run from solitude. The kind that stands rooted in self-awareness. So maybe the tension you feel during abstinence isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's a signal. A call to go inward, to wrestle with what's underneath the surface, because what you don't face controls you. Ask yourself, what am I afraid to sit with when I'm alone? What truth shows up when I stop numbing myself? Because once you answer that, you're no longer abstaining just for discipline, you're doing it for liberation. And once you've seen your shadow clearly, you're ready to confront the next enemy, the one most people don't even realize is winning. Once you've faced what's inside, the next challenge isn't internal, it's everything around you. Because even if you choose discipline, the world around you chooses distraction, and it never stops. Carl Jung lived in a time before smartphones, before social media, before algorithmic addiction. But even then, he warned that modern life was pulling people away from their inner truth, trapping them in roles, personas, and masks they didn't choose. Now imagine what he'd say today. Our world is saturated with stimulation. Advertisements don't sell products, they sell craving. Scroll long enough and you'll notice everything is designed to keep your nervous system addicted to novelty. And one of the easiest ways to hook people is through their sexual energy. Subtle innuendos, viral thirst traps, suggestive content. Every swipe, every click, every like is designed to pull a piece of your energy away. So even if you've committed to abstinence, even if you've sworn off the behavior, the environment doesn't stop testing you. It whispers, just one look, one message, one release. It's everywhere, on your screen, in your feed, in your pocket. So let's be honest, how do you protect your ancient power in a world addicted to noise? Because this is no longer just a personal struggle, it's a spiritual rebellion. Choosing not to give your energy to a system built on keeping you weak is radical. You're no longer just abstaining, you're resisting. You're choosing to become someone who doesn't flinch at silence, who doesn't run from self, who doesn't give in because the world says everyone else is doing it. You see, the moment you begin to reclaim your energy, the world pushes back harder. You'll feel it. The restlessness, the pressure, the subtle manipulation. But remember this, anything that costs you your clarity, your presence, your strength is too expensive. The modern world will always offer you comfort in exchange for power, but abstinence offers you power in exchange for discomfort. Which one are you choosing? Because if you can learn to stay grounded in the middle of all that noise, if you can protect your energy in a world that's constantly trying to harvest it, you've already won more than most. Now, something extraordinary begins to happen. The energy you've been preserving doesn't just sit still, it starts reaching for balance. And deep within, something ancient wakes up. When you begin to conserve and redirect your energy, especially sexual energy, something subtle but powerful starts to unfold. The balance you've been searching for out there starts forming within. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him a hidden feminine aspect called the anima, and every woman carries a hidden masculine counterpart, the animus. These aren't about gender roles, they're about psychic balance, about integrating the full spectrum of who you are. But most people never reach that stage. Why? Because they're too busy projecting these inner energies onto others. Think about it. How often have you heard someone say, "I can't live without her," or "he completes me"? Sounds romantic, but Jung would say that's actually a projection. What you're really chasing in another person is a part of yourself you haven't developed yet. And when sexual energy is always focused outward, when it's constantly seeking connection or release through someone else, you rarely get the chance to turn inward and meet these hidden archetypes inside you. But in abstinence, the mirror turns. The man who once chased every woman for approval begins to feel the quiet presence of the anima, his own intuition, emotional intelligence, empathy. It humbles him, softens him, and strengthens him in ways no performance ever could. The woman who once sought power in romantic dominance begins to encounter the animus, her logic, focus, assertiveness, inner fire. She learns to command herself before trying to command others. This is what makes abstinence so profound. It creates a sacred pause, one long enough for you to discover the other half of yourself, not to become someone else, but to become whole. Now think, how would your relationships change if you no longer sought completion from someone else? What kind of partner would you attract if you were no longer fragmented? How much more would you respect yourself if you no longer gave away your energy just to feel seen? Jung believed individuation, becoming a whole, integrated self, was the true goal of life. And sexual abstinence, when chosen consciously, becomes one of the rare paths that leads there. Because to integrate your anima or animus is to finally realize you are already enough. And from that wholeness, the next level emerges. Not just balance, not just power, but deep, unshakable direction. Once you stop outsourcing your energy, once you've met the parts of yourself you used to ignore, something powerful happens. You begin to move differently. You speak with more certainty. You make decisions without second guessing. Because you're no longer acting out of hunger, you're acting from wholeness. This is the return to self. Jung believed that when we stop identifying with the surface, our roles, desires, and compulsions, we get closer to what he called the self, the deeper, unified core of our being. And it's from this place that true power begins to flow. Power not as control over others, but as alignment with yourself. When your sexual energy isn't scattered or suppressed, but refined and integrated, your focus sharpens. You stop chasing the next thrill and start building something lasting. You wake up with clarity. You look people in the eye. You say what you mean. There's less noise in your head and more weight in your words. You stop needing to prove. You just are. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to radiate calm, even in chaos, like they carry a silent intensity you can't explain? That's what this kind of inner work creates. It's not charisma, it's centeredness. It's the product of someone who has turned down the noise long enough to know exactly who they are and what they're not. Let's take a relatable example. Think about someone who used to spend hours chasing attention, flirting, texting, seeking validation, but after choosing abstinence for a while, they redirect that energy into self-education, fitness, building a passion project. They're no longer chasing, they're cultivating. People notice, their presence shifts. Suddenly, they're not the one seeking approval, they're the one being observed. It's not ego, it's gravity, the kind that only forms when your energy stops leaking and starts solidifying. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped diluting your energy and started owning it? What kind of choices would you make, not from need, but from clarity? Because that's what this path leads to. Not a life of isolation, not a life of denial, but a life with direction. A life where you don't just react, you respond. Where your vision isn't clouded by craving, but guided by purpose. And once you feel that kind of clarity, once you've experienced what it means to stand inside your own power, you start to wonder, why would I ever give it away so easily again? Now that you've seen what happens when you stop leaking your energy, when you stop chasing quick fixes and start reclaiming your inner fire, there's only one question left. What are you going to do with all that power? Because sexual abstinence, when practiced with intention, doesn't make you weaker, it sharpens you. It clears your mind, it steadies your spirit, it forces you to confront what's been hiding beneath the surface, and in doing so, it transforms you. Carl Jung didn't preach repression, he taught transformation. He showed us that our desires, our instincts, our very urges aren't meant to be blindly followed. They're meant to be understood, refined, and transmuted into something far more meaningful, into creativity, into vision, into purpose. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to vanish into the mountains. You just need to stop giving your energy away to things that leave you emptier than they found you. Because the moment you stop chasing what drains you, you begin to attract what grows you. So now I ask you directly, what would your life look like if you held your power instead of handing it over? Who would you become if you stopped numbing and started feeling? What would you create if your mind was no longer clouded by cravings? Take a moment, reflect, and then drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, what's the biggest insight you've had about your own energy? Or better yet, what habit are you ready to let go of starting today? If this spoke to something in you, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more content that challenges the surface and dives into the soul. Because this isn't about trends or tricks, it's about truth. And if you're ready to stop running from your own power, you're exactly where you need to be.